Thank you for tuning into Stampscaping 101. This is a quick video here, well not real quick, it's about a half an hour, of just doing some stamp sketches. And what I mean by stamp sketches is just kind of playing around with a certain selection of stamps and doing some compositions with them, okay? Not really finishing them off, that'll be for another video if I do that. But what I wanted to do here in this video is just to show how some of the scenes on the insert for nature set number 10 were done, okay, including the front scene here, okay, and the scenes on the back. I didn't do this one right here because it's real similar to this scene. We don't need to do that. This one's just finished off in a kind of a different, kind of an antiqued color scheme. This is a stamp board piece right here, a 2x2-inch stamp board, just the chapel from the set. This scene right here is a square, and this scene right here is a square, but I've done similar compositions using a quarter-page piece of paper. Now this is reduced down here in size just so I could fit some different samples onto this insert, but that's how that's done. Trees alongside the water down here, and kind of a vertical configuration of this kind of meadow waterside chapel scene. But anyways, I thought I would just do that. For those that have the inserts or the sets that come with a color insert like that, if you're just kind of looking around for some ideas on how to put these scenes together from a compositional standpoint, that's what this video is for. Coloring of you know, these different compositions might come in another video. I'm not sure if I'll finish off some of these or not, but maybe I will. But what I explained in the kind of the end credit scene right here is a little bit about, you know, lighting in a scene and how to retain some of the lights and darks of your scene. You see the sun that comes with this set, that's going to be, you know, in most cases, if there's a sun in some sort of landscape, it's going to be the lightest thing in the scene. It's going to be your light source. So you notice in all the different scenes here where you have that sun stamped out, I just retain the whiteness of the page so that it becomes the light source within a scene. And as I explain with a little tiny bit more detail at the end of this video, when it comes to lighting and lighting schemes within a scene, you can see where there's some shadows, you know, like down here and down here. You know, when it comes to your approach for lighting, all you have to do is see kind of what's a little bit darker in the impressions, okay? And just reiterate that with some additional inks. In this case, it happens to be some yellows and greens, and browns, okay? I've made this area of the sky darker. I just don't touch that sun there, all right? That illuminates the sun. It makes it look like the light source. The pathway is really light, and I've just retained the lightness, and the shadows down here, like right around here, of course, what I've done is I've used some darker tones of ink in here, but where it gets lighter on the image, I just leave that light as is. So you take your cues. You don't have to look at this and kind of, it doesn't have to be a mystery of, let me see, where would that light be going? Just darken up some areas that are already darkened, okay? So we color in our whole thing, but when we use our medium and darker tones, just color the darker areas. Now here's some trees right here, and I put some shadows at the base of some of these trees, and at the base of those characters right here. But for the most part, just darken up the areas that are dark in this imagery, and you'll create a lighting scheme by doing so, okay? So anyways, stamp sketches with nature sheet or cling foam number 10. If you have this set or are thinking about getting the set and you want to see how those stamps are used from a compositional standpoint, this video is for you. Anyways, hope you enjoy it. and thanks for tuning into the channel. Okay, we're going to do a few stamp sketches here. This is an insert that comes with Nature Sheet number 10. The Nature Sheets come in either just rubber only or kind of a pre-trimmed cling foam mounted version. This one's the cling foam mounted version, and not all the inserts come with this double-sided insert like this, but let me see, sets number at this point in time 6 through 12 do. This one happens to have a color backside showing some different examples on how you can use this set in its entirety in some cases, like this scene right here, or this scene. But it also shows you, it goes into kind of usages of some of the stamps just by their, alone, or just certain images used in repetition, like these trees here stamped several times. But what I've tried to do is I've tried to give several examples of, just various configurations and things like color schemes here in these little examples around here. So I'm going to show how some of these were made here and just do kind of the sketches. I'm not going to finish them off in their entirety, but we'll just go into how these little, scenes were done. I mean, some of these are reductions, of course, just so I can get several on one page. But anyways, let's start off with, why don't we just start off with the front one here, okay? Now we have different colors here, like kind of this brownish, maybe sunset of a sky, where I've colored in that sun orange, and there's some variations of green throughout here, both in the coloring but also in the impressions. But I'm just going to expedite this a little bit and just stick with kind of more of a sketch so that you can see it, how these were done compositionally, okay? So normally I would stamp out that sun there in some form of kind of a brownish orange maybe, and I would take time to not only color some of these trees black, but you can, I don't know, see a little bit of green in there, and that's just been done with a little bit of pen. Same thing with this grass right here. But let's just talk about the sketching part. If you haven't seen some of my other videos, that are, I think I title them stamp sketching. It's just kind of taking some paper and not even worrying about the coloring portion of the process. Not that everyone colors. Some people just like doing, black and white compositions and building scenes that way. But it's just going around and kind of free-form stamping, just combining of, the imagery and whatnot. All right, now this one right here, I've placed the chapel about right here or so. Okay. And like I said before, these ones are the cling foam versions, so if you've seen my tack and peel videos, you know that I use the tack and peel with the rubber only portion, but when you put this tack and peel on one side of a block, you can just use this other side for your cling foam mounted stamps if you have those ones, and most people seem to have both. Okay, so let's take this. I'm gonna aim for that kind of pathway, kind of going roughly up to that doorway like that, okay? And you can see I'm overlapping into that chapel a little bit. Alright, now we're going to build up some of this area around it. We need to fill in these blank spots, right? Okay. So what I've done on this one is I've used the sedge cluster right here. Okay, it's like a little clump of grass with a little bit of a waterside area to it. And I've come into the pathway a little bit, okay? And you can see, you know, I've overlapped into that curvilinear road some. Okay, something about like so. And then kind of my overall blender for the, or I don't know, it's not really a blender, like a physical blender, but it's kind of the blending of imagery for grassy areas, the sedge filler stamp. Okay, going a bit like so. We have this little area over here. Looks like that other one on the scene, I've kind of stamped that curvilinear road over there a little bit more than this one, but it doesn't matter. That's what the sedge filler's for. Like that, like so. Okay, now these additional trees in the background were stamped with the tree cluster stamp. Okay, it's this one right here. This tree was, looks like it was stamped in its entirety in terms of a top to bottom but not left to right application, okay? So that one comes about like so. Okay, now the extent of my masking is just taking a ripped paper towel like so. And you can see this old tree down here and this tree in the background, okay? Let's just using portions of this one, okay? So we'll take that and we'll just mask off an area wherever you want your tree to be kind of growing out of, okay? Coming about like that. We'll take that. About like that. Alright, now, I mean, you can plant as many trees in here as you want to. I'm just doing this for the sake of kind of a demonstration on these specific scenes, but you know, if I were to do this scene, a similar scene like that again, I wouldn't do it exactly the same way I did that time, you know, referencing that scene, but again, for the sake of this stamp sketching video and demonstration. Okay, now here's the sun here. This is the cloud with sun stamp. I tell you what, maybe I will stamp this in some color just so you'll see kind of how it kind of will sit in the back of these trees. Now, if I stamped it in black, that would be fine too, but typically the darker the value of a given image, usually kind of the lighter, the farther back it seems. I think I got a little something on that. Oops. Some of my pads are starting to get a little bit deteriorated. These pads are probably 25 years old in terms of my demo set here. So the foam starts breaking down. Here we go. Here's another brown. I'm selling some of the old pads of mine from my workshop stamps. I need to use some of those myself. Okay, now this is brown and it's a lighter color than black, so you don't need to mask off any of those trees. It's not as if the brown is going to look like it's in front of the black, okay? Lighter colors seem to be kind of pushed farther back, lighter values, okay? So see how that goes right there? And that's the compositional foundation for that scene. Oops, forgot about these little characters here. This one, characters are named strolling. Like I'm going strolling in the park. Okay. When you get down to small imagery, make sure that you use kind of a nice light, even pressure. Don't press down as hard as you did with the larger stamps that have a much wider surface area, okay? Alright, so there you have that composition. Now, let's switch over to the back here. Let's take a look at this thing. This is kind of fun right here. See that? It's just using the chapel right here. Now, when I have, that one was done on Stampbord. Okay, this is a little piece of Stampbord. It's the 2 by 2 inch square. A little stain down there. I got some ink on it, but anyways, this can be done with any large stamp. Now this is a smaller stamp, but there's a larger version. But anytime you go with kind of this Stampbord, it's a stiff little panel, okay? And when a stamp is larger than your surface, if it's a stiff one like this, you can't do it on paper, but what I like to do is I just like to take this to stamp as opposed to taking stamp to that. I mean, you can, but I find it easier just to kind of see where my image is, and I just place it down like so. You know, it's a little bit more exacting. That's one of the nice things about Stampbord. But like I said, a lot of times people feel that are new to scenic stamping that they have to stamp the entire image out, you know, and if a piece of paper is smaller than the stamp, then that can't be used. But the nature of scenic stamping, you know, is that things often run off the edge of the page. Okay, now this scene I don't need to redo this one. This composition is really similar to this one. I just wanted to do this one in a different color scheme. Of course, I've placed the sun instead of on the right side. I've placed it on the left side over here, okay? But let's take a look at this. I'm big into kind of maximizing the usage of imagery in terms of being able to stamp something in repetition and making something as, hopefully, as universal as possible, okay? And that's one of the great things about scenic stamping, is that you can let me raise my camera up here a little bit. One of the great things about it is there's so much repetition in nature. I mean, they say two things aren't never exactly the same, but, you know, for our purposes, it's just fine to have things very similar, you know, in terms of a tree. You know, a single tree can create like an entire forest as far as stamping is concerned. Okay, that was the sun right there. I mean, this is a square composition right here, but let's do something here. I'll show you how you can layer those trees in there, okay? See, there's some kind of in the foreground, some in the background. Let's do the foreground first. Let's establish that, okay? Now with each impression, I'm re-inking. Okay. Now I'll just do this on a kind of a landscaped, you know, rectangular size quarter-page piece of paper. Okay, now what you can do is, this is the way I do it at least, you don't need to mask off too many of those trees, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a dry paper towel and really wipe off the bottom of this. I mean, if it stamps out a little bit, that's fine, but what I'm doing is I'm really taking off the color off the bottom, or the black, and then as I move up the tree, I'm taking off a little bit less right here, so there's a little bit of a transition between wet to dry down here on the stamp. So there's the medium dry in here, okay? So you don't want to do this with a dry paper towel, otherwise a wet paper towel, otherwise it'll take off all of that ink just in a straight line, and that won't transition. So when I stamp it like in here, okay, see how that transitions out like that? And it doesn't kind of obscure too much the silhouette of the tops of those trees. Now let's do a couple more of those. Okay. So harder rub down here, and a few swipes in here. So that's a little bit, can you see it? It's a little bit wet, medium to dry down here, okay? And let's go about like that. See? See, it's a little bit grayer in here. Could have taken off a little bit more in there, and that would have been a little bit better, but not bad. Okay, you see all those transitions like that. Okay, now that's kind of the foundation for this type of thing, okay? Right here. Just the sun, 2 stamps, you know, but, you know, an entire forest right here. I can even go with another layer in the background if I want to. You know, you can even just kind of wipe off. Let's go for the second impression of this one, okay? Now I've already stamped it out right there, okay? So this has less ink on it. So if I wanted a tree, you know, farther back, a little bit of a hill back there, or slope, you can get an even lighter impression, okay? Now this looks kind of strange out here because we don't have our tone around here, and that's not really standing out as a light source, but what you do is you just bring in, you know, your color in here and retain that little light area just by not coloring it out, okay? That's what happens. When people see these scenes like this, you know, like that, and, you know, in the foreground, they always wonder how you got that white. They think it was all color, and then you've somehow bleached that out or applied white back into it, right? No, but you just don't color it out with ink, but you start off with a white piece of paper. If you ever do this technique, your friends and family, you'll confound them with the end results. Alright, let's go back to our sedge filler stamp right here. And let's do something really similar to that last scene like that, but this one it just happens to use the sedge filler, and then I kind of work this in layers back here, okay? So sedge filler, this is one of my favorite stamps in terms of its blending properties. It just blends and overlaps beautifully, okay? Sedge filler, sedge cluster, sorry. This one is the sedge filler. I put it on this side of my stamp, okay? Overlapping with itself, overlapping the previous impressions, the sedge cluster. Go again with another layer of the sedge filler, okay? And yet another one in the background, like that, okay? Now that could all be one straight hill if you want to. You can just plant trees wherever. But see where I've kind of gone with those 3 layers? It blends in so well together, sometimes it's hard to see, but that doesn't matter. You want it to blend in. But what I do is to differentiate sometimes the distances. Let's say what I'm representing here is some hills, like some hills that kind of undulate, okay, going back in the distance. So let's take our tree cluster stamp I'll start off with those. In the scene, I probably, colored them up with a little bit of green as well. But we're just doing some stamp sketches here, so we'll keep our coloring to a minimum. Okay. Just like we used portions in here of the the tree cluster. Go like this. Okay. And see now where I've put that other sedge filler right here, I've stamped it across like that, like a little band of it. I'll mask off that band, and I'll put some trees behind that little area. Sometimes I'll just use the very tip of this. Okay, so it does that, and we'll mask off that distant band of filler. Okay, like so. And what I do is I just go for kind of some of the tips of the trees, so it looks like the trees are also smaller in the distance. And you have your kind of meadow with the trees going off into the distance. That's the foundation for something like that. Okay. Alright. Final one. Let's put it all together. Let's do this type of thing right here, but let's bring the chapel back into the scene. And to create a little bit more distance in the scene, what we'll do is we'll use our paper card in more of a portraiture configuration, vertical. Okay. And we'll go like this with the sedge filler. Sedge cluster. Sedge filler. Alright. Okay, that's kind of our foundation right there. Let's go back to our chapel. And I'll just plant that right down in here. I could potentially stamp out all the background sedge filler because the sedge filler is fairly light. But I'm stamping this right now because I didn't want that sedge filler stamp to be, textures to be in that little chapel area, in the lighter area, okay? So that's why I'm stamping that right now, so that when I go back to my sedge filler stamp again, see this, I can work around this one. I can just go like this. Looks like I have it on a little bit of a, sometimes when there's a little bit of a slope, it kind of adds a little bit of drama, visual drama. I mean, this one's not that much of a drama, but you can see this one kind of, it's a little bit sloped up there, which I like. And then, let's go back to our tree cluster stamp, okay? And let's fill in with some additional imagery, like that, and let's go with the background again. And we have something like that. Okay, let's take a look here and see what we have. Okay, we have this one right here. You get a lot more meadow if you go vertical, right? You have more foreground and background because the possibility is, you just have more space to go vertical with it. And sometimes going vertical makes, something look a little bit more distant. Okay, let's see. I usually put foreground down here. Sometimes I'll do an overhanging tree, and that'll represent foreground too, and that looks good. All right. So various configurations using a selection of stamps. Okay. Just used by itself, this would make a really great scene for some kind of animal in here. A little subject matter, and that would be good. But this is just used by itself, But, like I said, some kind of focal point would be good. Little bird or something like that. Just a very minimal use, one stamp scene. And, for me, that makes... This is a scene right here. We have a lot of things going on. We have a lighting scheme, value scale from light to dark. This one I've scratched a little star into the sky with my scratch knife, okay? That little twinkly star this is Stampbord, and it's a clay surface, and it's very similar to Scratchboard. If you want some information on it, you can look on our website. And here we have our scene using all the different imagery that comes with the scene right here. Okay, a lot of kind of undulation of light and dark throughout here. Just taking these, you can see where the shadows are, where it's been stamped out, right? There's areas that are darker in the imagery, okay, and that's all I've done is I've kind of darkened it a little bit more, kind of at the base of some trees. I've added some shadows, but you can see where this little pathway is darker right here. I've used my darker colors of ink right there, but in the lighter area up here, I just leave it alone. That's how we get this nice kind of curvature type of appearance. Same thing right in here, okay, adding a little bit of tone down here, but leaving the top of it lighter, okay, and that's in the imagery itself, okay. It's a little bit darker here, so I've added a little bit of the darker green here, but see this is kind of more yellowish up here. That's just kind of left that tone where the shadows are just enhanced a little bit more. So you can take your cues from your impressions right here as far as lighting, okay? A lot of people have trouble with lighting in the beginning, when they first start doing scenic stamping. See, this pathway is lighter, right? So I've just left it a little bit lighter. I put a little bit of color in there, otherwise I don't want it to look like it's, illuminated, like it's a light bulbs underneath the pathway or something like that. So I put a little color on there, but areas on the scenes that are just darker, I've darkened with additional ink. All right, so something like this. It's just these simple trees right here, just building up your trees in the background. It's kind of a selective use of imagery right here, but it's kind of just more of the fading off style of selective usage. In this one right here, it's selective usage because I've masked off the entire bottom, but you can also fade off the bottom of these, in other words, fade it off into nothing, okay, from, pure black impression to gray to white, okay? See this one right here, I didn't mask off all these trees right here, it's just wiped off the bottom of it, so it kind of fades off like that. So there's various ways that you can do kind of selective stamping with your existing imagery to make them really go a long way, And this is just one set right here. I mean, certainly when you start to incorporate other imagery from other sets or just individual stamps from our line or other, companies' lines, you open up the possibilities even more, and they go up exponentially because you can use them in combination with any of these. So this is just, the combination of these 6 stamps right here, used, or 7 stamps, sorry, used just kind of, independently from any other external set. So that's set number 10. And those are some stamp sketches, kind of a fun way to play around with a new set, or that's what I do when I get new stamps together. I just do a few of these sketches right here, and I just kind of work compositionally to get a feel for how they can be used and how they're used, okay? Even if I've used them before, you know, when I designed these sets and put these sets together, I wanted to see how they would be used and in combination before kind of we went to whatever market with those sets. I wanted to make sure that there's a ton of variety that you can do with those existing stamps within one set. Anyways, stamp sketches, hope you enjoyed the video and thanks for watching.